How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Ginny Arts. I'm Ginny, and today we're learning how to draw a baby sea turtle step by step. This is one of the more complicated drawings, so to get the initial sketch, I used the grid method. If you've never heard of it, basically you have to draw a grid onto your reference photo and draw a grid onto your paper. Personally, I'd recommend drawing a grid out of squares to ensure that no distortion happens. Then, when you have the grid, just copy the lines that are in every individual square. I've put the link to the reference picture in the description so that you could use it either for freehand sketching or for using the grid method. I'd also advise putting a black and white filter on it so that you could see the tones better. For this drawing, I did something a bit different. I started with creating the background. To do that, I've used graphite dust and a brush to get somewhat of a smoother finish. Make sure to make the gradient that's going from dark to light from the bottom to the top, because in the water, the light is going from the top, and as it gets deeper, the amount of light becomes smaller. Then, as usual, I started off with the eye. In this design, the eye is much more complicated than in other animal drawings that we did. Start off by shading the pupil black, then closely look at the reference picture or follow me and do what I did in the video. It took me a couple of tries and I ended up simplifying the design a bit. Basically, I left only one circle going around the pupil, added some faint lines going towards it. Then I left the area around the iris of the eye a bit lighter. Then I faintly outlined the scaly texture of the skin above and under the eye. From there, I started coloring the scales on the head, making sure to leave a white area in between them. One thing you have to make sure is that the nostril is black and the area around it is lighter. Also, look into the fact that the top of the head is lighter than the side due to the light coming from above. Once you colored all the scales on the head, you can lightly go over the areas in between them with the blending tool. This is done to add a very light shade of gray and to make it look a bit more natural. Once you get to the area around the mouth, add a line that separates the upper jaw from the lower. Then add some faint lines that would indicate scales and gently go over it with a blending tool. Make the bottom part of the upper jaw darker and the lower should be darker on the top and lighter on the bottom. Also, add a line on the bottom that would separate the fin from the head. Then we can move on to the fin that's closest to the head. First, outline the fin itself, then add lines where the first row of the scales are. After that, shade in the middle, making sure that the bottom part is darker. Then, erase a bit of background outside the right side of the fin. Then, using an eraser, draw the scales of the fin, go over it with a blending tool, and go over the lines again with an eraser. Repeat this process until you have the desired look. Then we can move on to the neck. For this part, just shade in the top of it by drawing many individual lines, and add some lines with an eraser. This will work as highlights. For the other half of the neck, shade it with a lighter shade of gray and add a couple of individual lines with a harder pencil to show the creases. Make sure to make the bottom of the neck a bit darker and add a darker spot near the center of the neck. This gives it more dimension. Then we can start shading the shell. Make the lines separating different segments of the shell dark. Then shade in the segments themselves with a darker shade. Make sure to leave highlights. On each segment, the highlight will be in a different spot due to the water surface being wavy. To figure out where to put the highlights, I'd recommend either copying what I'm doing in the video or just looking at the reference image. When shading the shell, make sure to leave the bottom part of the shell fragments on the first row white. Afterwards, I outlined the bottom part of the shell and shaded it lightly using a blending tool. I left the area where the bottom part meets the upper part a bit highlighted just to add more dimension to the shell. Then, for the part where the fin goes out from the shell, do the similar thing that you did with the fin. Just shade in the darkest parts, add some details, in this case some dots and some lines to mimic the skin texture. Go over it with a blending tool and repeat the process until you get the desired look. Now we can move on to the fin in the front. Here, outline the right side of the fin and leave the left white. Outline the first row of the scales, then shade in the rest of the fin, making the bottom part darker than the top. Once again, draw the scales using an eraser, go over it with a blending tool and repeat until you have the desired look. Just this time, add some highlights on the sides of the dark area. Then repeat the same thing for the upper part of the fin. Just darken it up a little bit and make the detail smaller as you go up. Now, just repeat the same technique on two remaining fins. Make sure that the one on the back or the smaller one is darker and the area where it meets the body is the darkest. And to finish off, I decided to draw sand on the bottom of the drawing. To do that, simply use an eraser to draw waves where the top part of the lower row meets the bottom part of the upper row. This creates empty areas in between. Then darken one side of the empty area and add some random highlights on the other side. As you do this, simply lighten up the sand until it merges with the shade of the water. Then just add some highlights using a kneaded eraser to show the rays of the sun that are going through the water. And you're done. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and if there's anything you would like to see me draw, make sure to leave a comment. And I'll see you guys soon.